Hi guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. My most popular video ever was one of me sitting in my car yapping about how to stop being a loser. And now I have a podcast called How to Stop Being a Loser. And I really like these sit down style kind of advice, like chatty videos. So that's what we're gonna do. And I feel like that's the kind of content that you guys really like on my TikTok too. So we're gonna do a long format video that's basically gonna be an amalgamation of all the things that I talk about on my TikTok and my Substack, but obviously those are much smaller, condensed forms of information, and I feel like it would be good to talk about kind of everything, all encompassing this very daunting topic of basically how to get smarter, how to be more educated, how to prioritize your intellectual curiosity, how to be disgustingly overeducated into one video. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm just a girl. But I spend a lot of time learning, and over the past 3 years, I've spent a lot of time learning how to learn, and I feel I have a very unique relationship with education in general, as ambiguous of a term that is. And I feel like my knowledge is helping people. So although I might not have the higher education to be qualified, I know that most people don't have access to that. Like, I would love to be able to go to med school or go get a degree in neuroscience, but cannot afford that yet. I have no idea how I'm gonna afford to go to law school, but it's something that I'm prioritizing and figuring out. And I think only 20% of people have access to higher education. It's so insanely expensive to go get a degree. And obviously, because of that, you're not gonna have access to the same, peer-reviewed journals and articles and studies and things that those professionals have, but we do have access to the internet and books and other professionals and other scientists and other doctors. And I think a lot of people just don't know that, and they don't know how to go about researching things themselves and kind of what running an experiment for themselves would look like, whether it's with supplements or beauty routines or cortisol levels or exercise or all these different things. But I really believe in the power of prioritizing your intellectual curiosity, and I think your brain is the one thing that no one can take from you. Keeping your mind sharp is the best piece of armor you can equip yourself with. I think if you're gonna invest in anything, it should be your education. Not because it makes you smarter, not because it makes you sound better, not because it makes you more confident, but because I think truly it will lead you to feeling more purposeful, feeling more alive, and living a better life. I think that if you really love something, you wanna know everything about it, and you have endless curiosity about it, and you have a million questions for it, and all you wanna do is learn about it, whether it's another person or a topic or a career. And I think so few of us feel that way about life as a whole. And I think if you really loved life, life would love you back. And I truly, truly believe that. And so it's like, why wouldn't you want to know everything about life and all of the amazing things that it has to offer, whether it's nature or medicine or psychology or geography or history or fashion, whatever. But the best classroom there is the world around you. And we have access to this amazing, limitless abundance of education and learning right in front of us. And I feel like so many of us don't take advantage of it and don't allow ourselves to be as astounded by that, because it is such a funny, complex thing when you actually stop and notice the world around you, and you actually stop and pay attention and want to have a deeper level of understanding of things. But also, when you prioritize taking care of your brain, your memory becomes better, and so you can remember experiences and lessons and positive things. You can also remember negative things, help protect yourself better. It improves your focus, so you're able to be more in the present moment, which my number one piece of advice to anyone is learning to be as present as possible. And that's much easier to do if you don't have the attention span of a squirrel. Improve your memory, improve your focus, work on your knowledge, improve your vocabulary, elevate the way that you speak, elevate the way that you articulate yourself, the way that you're able to regulate your emotions and understand your own moods and behaviors and attitudes, and be able to psychoanalyze other people and situations going on around you and increase your levels of empathy. It will lead you to having a much better existence and a much better time. A lot of people think that power is how much control you have over other people, but it's not. It's how much control you have over yourself. It's going to be very hard to control something that you know nothing about. But if you can really understand yourself, if you can really understand why you do the things that you do, why you feel the way that you feel, how your body operates, how your brain operates, how you can optimize all of those things to live the best life possible and control yourself, control your emotions, control what you do in a day, control how you spend your time, control who you surround yourself with. All of this is a product of prioritizing your education. I feel my purpose, or one of my purposes, is to just get people excited about learning, get people inspired to learn. I never had a role model growing up that was academically inclined, and so I never saw it as something to aspire to. Like, I didn't make good grades, I didn't seek out knowledge. I didn't think I was gonna go to college until like 2 weeks before the application deadline closed. I had one parent who really didn't want me to go to college, and I had one who really did. And I think that, so like growing up, my dad would get me up at like 5 a.m. every day and educate me on different things, whether it was books, whether it was YouTube videos, whether it was documentaries, you know, whatever it was. I was always being exposed to higher levels of education than I think most kids my age were. And I don't know if it was a product of me being burnt out from that, or me not seeing the value in traditional like classroom academics as I saw in the education I was getting at home, or if, I don't know what it was, but I was very invested in that and very exposed to that. And then when I got to school, I just made terrible grades and I didn't care. I also was introduced to therapy and philosophical ways of thinking. Both my parents are very philosophical. They do very interested in self-improvement and self-help and like retreats and how to improve your well-being and these kinds of things. Like, I went to a therapy retreat at like 12 that they sent me to. It sounds like a troubled teens camp, but it's not. It was kind of close. But I learned a lot about psychology and emotional regulation starting from a very, very young age. I've always sort of spoken like a therapist because of that. I've always sort of had a higher understanding of what's going on with other people and myself emotionally. I've always been very introspective and kind of looked at emotions in an analytical way because of my upbringing. My attendance rate was like 87%. I just didn't care. And it's one of my biggest regrets. It is one of my biggest regrets to this day, is not having that accomplishment and not having that achievement of knowing that I at least did the best that I could. Something that I've learned is that knowledge is knowledge. And of course, some of it is gonna feel like it's more useful to you because maybe it's applicable to your life with your health or with your friends. But I truly see value in learning anything, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's ancient history, whether it's how your clothes are made and where your clothes come from, or what's in your hair products, or why your best friend acts the way that she does, or how your car works. I think there's value in all of that. And so this thing about street smarts versus school smarts, I see it as all the same, to be honest with you. I think knowledge is knowledge. I think knowledge is power. And I think if you are spending your time learning and you dedicate your life to taking great care of your brain and being as intellectually curious about life and other people as possible, I think that's a life well lived. So I graduated college. I never really made great grades. I never was academically impressive or inclined. And then I graduated college and I just started like burning through books. I just loved reading. I loved reading articles and studies, and I was a beauty influencer. Now I'm an education-based influencer, but I would always research like the different chemicals and things, not chemicals, different ingredients in products. And I would just read studies on them, on like National Institute of Health and stuff. And my friends, I started being the person that my friends would text and say, hey, can you tell me what you think of the ingredients in this? And I would give them a little lesson on like what I thought of the ingredients. I'm obviously not a dermatologist, but you know. And so that started happening. And then I started getting really into it. Like all of my free time was spent researching random topics, playing brain games. Like I was just so addicted to learning and the feeling of that like dopamine release when I felt proud of myself for learning something new. and like a light bulb going off or something clicking or connecting, or the ability for me to teach something to somebody else that might help them with their life. And I was like, wow, this is really lighting something up in me. You find your passion, you find your purpose, like it really becomes the wind beneath your wings. And then I decided to take an LSAT because I was like, it's basically a giant test of brain games. Like that sounds fun. And I took it and I got a pretty good diagnostic score. So then I kept taking it, and now I'm studying for it full time in hopes of applying to law school. So yeah, you never know where learning could take you. And yeah, that's a huge dollar signs, but I hope that I study enough and hard enough to get a high score so that that's paid for. But anyway, I'm rambling. I just wanted to make this video today talking about why I think it's so important that you focus on your education and prioritize your intellect and your brain and keeping your brain sharp and focused. And I want to give you some practical application tools that you can implement into your life to help you make learning a lifestyle and to help you be ridiculously overeducated, because I think that's where true power lies. And I think it's so sad to me that most people will never know how brilliant they can be. List of things that I want you to start doing to make yourself disgustingly overeducated. Start treating curiosity like a religion. The world around you is the best classroom you will ever have access to, and you could learn so much just sitting in the room that you're in right now. I think sometimes it's our default to need to pull out a book or pull out a study or get online. Sometimes the best education you can get is with things that don't have anything to do with a screen or reading. So for example, if you're, like I was at a Chinese restaurant the other day and I was waiting for my takeout food, and I immediately got on my phone, stopped myself, said I'm not gonna sit here and get on my phone. So I started looking around and I was like, wow, that's such a beautiful bar. It had this like beautiful mosaic tile on it. And instead of going, oh wow, that looks good, and then moving on, there's an entire design, construction, science lesson there for you. Start asking yourself, like, how did they do that? Like, how did they build that bar? And how did they get it through the door? And how did they put the countertop on top? And what is the countertop made out of? And where does mosaic come from? And how is it processed? And how did they glue all the tiles to it? And how much do I think that costs? If I were gonna recreate that in my home, how would I do that? Just that, working your brain like that and increasing your problem solving skills and your critical thinking skills and just the art of noticing will skyrocket your intelligence. Or you drive to work every day, it's the same route, you don't notice how beautiful the trees are anymore. You don't notice that you are driving by these really interesting buildings. You don't notice the people that are walking out of the coffee shop. It's habituation, something that we fall into that sort of blocks you from really just noticing how beautiful the world is and how many new things are going on. And maybe it's not beautiful, and maybe you don't live in a beautiful place. Regardless, there are things to learn. How does a traffic light work? What kind of clouds are those? What's making the wind blow? What kind of tree is that? How did they plant that tree there? How old do I think it is? If I were to guess what that person does for a living, what would it be? What kind of dog is that? I mean, there's so many things just looking out the window that you can teach yourself. And I think that that is one of the most amazing things that you can do to live a much more colorful, vibrant life that's more fulfilling, because you're getting more out of life instead of just, I'm driving to work. I'm doing the same thing I do every day. It's like, wow, that's boring as hell. I would literally slit my wrists, no offense, but allow yourself to be astounded by things and pleased by things and curious about things, because it's interesting, because it's really interesting. And if you allow yourself to be interested, so many times I find that people are just, they don't allow themselves to be surprised by things. But it's like, if you were to actually stop and turn your brain on and allow yourself to be curious and find the value, you'd realize, like, this is a really fucking interesting world we live in. So that's the first thing. Curiosity is a religion. And that also is gonna bleed into, if you hear a word you don't know, if you overhear a conversation going on and you don't know what they're talking about, do not be satisfied with a surface level understanding of things. That's number two. If you're reading something, if you're watching something, if you don't know what you just read, if you don't know what you just watched, if there's a term you don't know, if there's a culture you're not familiar with, if there's a food you've never heard of, if there's a word that you could not use yourself in a sentence, look it up. Like, do the research. You should be so grateful that we have something as abundant as the internet that can answer any question that could possibly pop into our head. Take advantage of that. It's honestly hilarious to me that the more access to information we have, the less intelligent we become, when it should be the complete opposite. It's just what we're spending our time doing with this information. So it's like, I cannot tell you how many things I have learned just from not letting myself be satisfied with the surface level understanding. If I read something in a book, so many people will read an entire page of their book, not understand anything that they just read, and just keep reading the book. Seriously, what are you doing? Why are you even wasting your time? That is ridiculous. You might as well go stare at a wall. Actually, that would probably have more benefits cognitively, so do that instead. Like, what are we doing? Why did you just buy this book? Why did you just spend 30 minutes reading it? Do you know what that means? Do you know what they just said? Read it again, read it slower, read it out loud. Do not allow yourself to be satisfied. It demands a higher level of self-respect and confidence when you say, no, I deserve to know what that word means. I deserve to know what I just read. And it's fun. Again, I think it just makes life a whole lot more dynamic. Like, I cannot tell you how many things I've learned from watching movies and just kind of like taking notes and being like if they're like, we were watching some movie and there was some like religion I'd never heard of. That night, I had the best time researching the history of this culture, this religion I'd never heard of, and I learned so much. But I didn't just go, oh wow, that's crazy, or wow, oh, I've never heard of that, or what does that word mean, and then move on. Obviously, if I'm watching a movie with someone else, I'm not gonna pause it every 5 seconds and like look things up, but just take note of it mentally. It doesn't have to be the whole movie, but take note of the things that you don't know and let that stick out to you, and don't be satisfied with basically allowing yourself to be brain dead. I think go deeper in the context of things. Start viewing the world as a classroom. I'm gonna teach you how to understand things. So many people don't know how to learn, don't know how to understand things. I know this because I didn't know how to learn. I could not figure out why I couldn't learn, and it's because a lot of times what's taught in schools is you read something on a page, it goes into your brain, and then you take notes on it, copying the exact same thing that you wrote, so it's been regurgitated onto this piece of paper, and then you move on. And it's like, yeah, well, no shit, you didn't understand anything. It was literally in one ear and out the other. Book, out in one ear, out the other, onto your page of notes. You need to keep it in between your ears for longer and ruminate and think about it. The brain is a survival tool. It only cares about things that have to do with your survival. So if you're learning about quantum physics, if you've done nothing to make it personal to you, to make you give a shit about it, you're not gonna remember it. Your brain has a mechanism called sensory gating, which is basically like the brain's bouncer that's going to filter out information for what it needs and what it doesn't need. That's why, like, if you started to learn Spanish in high school and you were kind of like getting there, like you were learning a lot, but it's been 3 years and now you can't remember any of it, that's why, because it's not relevant to you anymore. You're not constantly showing your brain that this is important. There's also the survival processing effect, or the survival advantage in memory, which basically is why you're much more likely to remember something like a snake or a saber-toothed tiger than the color of someone's shirt or an apple. You know, you're gonna remember the threat or the thing that's posing danger to you that has to do with your survival versus something that doesn't, because the brain is a survival tool. So if you're learning things and you obviously, okay, you don't need to start looking at the things that you learn and be like, how am I gonna make this threatening to me? But think about why this matters to you. Like, how can you apply this to your own life? How is this going to affect you? How is this gonna affect your relationship with people? How is this gonna affect your health? How is this gonna, you know, whatever. Think about it for a while, ruminate on it, come up with an answer, and it will stick in your memory better. I think going back to the not being satisfied with the surface level understanding of things, if you cannot teach this to a kindergartner, you don't know it. Ask questions, go deeper. If you hear a fact, instead of going, oh wow, that's really crazy, and then moving on as if you're gonna remember that and as if you've learned it, you don't know anything about that fact. So if the fact is something like, there are more bacteria in the gut than there are cells in the human body, instead of going, wow, that's really crazy, and then moving on like an idiot, from now on, you could say, well, how many cells are in the gut? Or how many cells are in the human body? or how many different kinds of bacteria are in the gut? And is there only one more bacteria in the gut than there are cells in the human body? Like, what's the discrepancy here? And is that the same in a toddler? And is that the same in someone who has some kind of gut microbiome issue? Is this the same on the opposite side of the planet? What if I'm nutrient deficient? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Is it a neutral thing? And how did they test that? And what is the gut? Is it the small intestine? Is it the stomach? I don't think I know. I think I've heard of that before. And should I be taking probiotics for that? And what is a probiotic and what's a prebiotic? There are so many different things. And just doing that, just having that deeper level of contemplation and rumination and demanding that I have a deeper understanding of things that's achieved through this religious curiosity, I'm going to remember that fact. Right now, I'm going to remember that fact because I just did that. Even though I haven't even started to do the research on the other things, which by the way would take 2 seconds. I read an article the other day that said the smartest person I know, or the smartest person I've ever met, would learn things to the point of understanding them. So to the point where he could teach this concept to a child because he knew it so well, and then he'd go write 4 essays on it. That level of understanding and learning is the kind that sticks in your brain. Like, that is true learning. And I think that you can do that. I think that you can learn something, which means that you can teach it to someone else, and then go write a paragraph in the format of a children's story about it, or put it in space and write about it as if it were in space. You know, there's so many different like creative writing prompts that you can do, or just write about it in a way that is easy to understand, that's going to challenge your brain. And that's going to force you into memory recall. It's going to force you to have a deeper level of understanding because it's rewiring your brain to remember this thing and know this thing in a million different contexts and get it really integrated into all the different parts of your brain. Next thing I want to talk about is my learnings of the week. I think everyone should do learnings of the week or the month or whatever, but pick a topic and learn it and research it. This can be like 10 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day. But if you're consistently learning about a similar topic every single day, you're going to learn it little by little by little by little by little. I love science. I'm really into quantum physics right now. And so I spend a lot of time researching quantum physics. And so I spent probably 2 weeks researching that every day. Now I'm reading a book, Quantum Physics for Poets, and it's something that I'm really learning. I think a lot of people get frustrated because they're like, why would I spend the time researching something or learning something if I'm gonna forget it in a week anyway? And it's like, you're forgetting it because you're not making it personal, making it important to you. You're not learning it to the point where you could teach it to someone else. You're not being consistent, which is a big thing. I think a lot of times, like, you want to be reading 3 books and researching articles and watching documentaries and elevating your vocabulary and playing brain games and doing all these things all at once, and that's not a realistic, sustainable way for you to actually learn things. Like, pick a topic. If it's nature, great. If it's the Amazon rainforest, great. If it's the study of hair care, great. Whatever it is, and just focus on that for a while until you really know it. Because if you really were learning something, if you were really going slow and you had a deeper understanding of what you were learning, you would have 4 million questions every single time you research it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna run out of information about a certain topic because none of them are that succinct, none of them are that closed off, and everything is just an appendage of everything else. And you can extrapolate all these different bits and pieces of knowledge into a million other topics. Like, if you start researching hair, I can't imagine that that wouldn't lead you to start researching proteins and peptides and skincare and keratin and products and diet and practice, you know, all those different things. So it's not like you just watch a video and move on. And if you are doing that, maybe the topic's boring and you should research something that makes you, you know, light up a little bit more. But yeah, if you're really treating curiosity like a religion and you're really like into it and you're learning it, then I think you're never gonna run out of information. So take it slow. You have the rest of your life to learn things. So I try to have a fiction and a nonfiction book going at all times. I like to switch on and off. I am studying for the LSAT right now, and sometimes after I'm studying, I don't really want to read dense nonfiction because I've just read, you know, 8 dense nonfiction articles on the test. So I'll read nonfiction, but consistent reading consistent reading, you will learn so much. You're exposing your brain to someone else's linguistic verbal style. That in and of itself has a lot of knowledge. It also, I think, forces you into a deeper state of focus. And there's something really valuable about deep work. I haven't done a lot of research on that, but that's something I want to be able to talk about. Is I firmly believe that getting into that flow state of like deep work, there's something so valuable to that, where the only thing that you're paying attention to is that. It's like getting in a meditative state. And I think doing that, even if it's for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes a day or a night, I think there's so much value. It will expand your vocabulary, your problem solving skills, your critical thinking skills, open you up to different perspectives and writing styles. So yeah, read. You have to read. 5 minutes a day, whatever, but just do it. Get it in. Read. And even if it's one page, even if you're having such a hard time understanding what you're saying that you have to reread the same page 3 or 4 times, do it. Like, do not move on. This is something I learned studying for the LSAT. Word by word. If you have to summarize every sentence, read the sentence, look away, tell me what you just read. Read the next sentence, connect it to the first one. Break it down little by little until you understand. I know this sounds like a lot of work, but it's not. It's actually less work. Otherwise, you're mindlessly reading something like a zombie and just kind of wasting your time. And I think that's negative. So don't do that. Also, Mind Maintenance, my Mind Maintenance series on TikTok, I'm so happy that people are responding so well to it. But working your brain, like neuroplasticity is real. That is the brain's ability to rewire itself and create new neural connections and new neural pathways to change your personality, your behavior, your attitude, the way that you see the world, your default mood, your baseline mood. You have control over all of these things. And it's really important to support and stimulate your neuroplasticity, especially as we get older, because it decreases when you're young. Your brain is much more neuroplastic. But yeah, keep your brain working, keep it sharp. Research neuroplasticity. But doing things, making learning a lifestyle and supporting your neuroplasticity a lifestyle is fun. And I think it makes life way more interesting and way more rewarding. And if you want to get really good at learning things, improving memory, improving focus, being able to have a widened perspective. I feel like a lot of people, their problem is that they can only see things from their perspective, and they have a really hard time understanding where other people are coming from, and that's what's creating this like negative perspective on the world, negative perspective on life. You can have a positive perspective on life. You can brainwash yourself. Actually, no, that is the word. You can brainwash yourself so extremely to the point where you think you're living in like a fairy tale where there's rainbows and butterflies everywhere. And if you don't believe me, just research cults. And it's such a salient piece of evidence that the human brain is so incredibly malleable. We're all such products of our environments and the way that we were raised, and there's science behind this. So use that to your advantage. Like you are the artist of your mind. You're the architect of your own life and of your own perspective and your own brain, and repeated exposure to negative thoughts is going to train the brain to expect negativity. Repeated exposure to positive thoughts is going to train the brain to expect positivity. So brainwash yourself. And if you want to be able to do this, if you want to be able to live in a reality where you are seeing more opportunities, more positivity, more love, more money, more abundance, more beauty in the world, you have to support your neuroplasticity and take care of the mechanism that is going to be able to achieve that for you. Does that make sense? So use your non-dominant hand, write, problem solve, play brain games, play Sudoku, play crossword, research things, ask yourself thought-provoking deep questions. Stop using Apple Maps or Google Maps and learn the roadways of your city. Expose your brain to a new language and learn a couple words a day in French or Spanish or English or whatever. I guess it wouldn't be English, assuming you're watching this video, unless you're doing closed captions in foreign languages to me. Anyway, learn to play a new instrument, cook things that are challenging, and learn how to bake and take on new hobbies and work your fucking brain and create new neural connections and new neural pathways. If your baseline mood, if your default reaction is to blame everyone else, Instead of saying, I need to be more positive, I need to think more positively about things, whatever the fuck that means. No, next time you find yourself in this position, it's an opportunity for you to rewire your brain. So tell yourself, we're not gonna do that. We're going to find the value here. Force yourself. If I paid you $1 million, could you find the value in the situation? Could you find the positivity? Could you put a positive spin on the situation? Do it, do it, do it, do it over and over again until it becomes a habit. If your default mood is to freak out and spiral into a crippling abyss of anxiety if this guy doesn't text you back within 26 minutes because it's 6:30 and that's the deadline that I gave him in my head, if that's your default, change it. Don't just sit there and wallow or try and distract yourself with TV. You're just feeding the problem. So let's feed a different perspective, okay? I'm losing my light. This is going to be so much easier for you to do. You're going to feel so much more in control of your own behavior if you support your neuroplasticity, because you're going to be able to rewire your brain to live the way that it wants to. So look up things I can do right now to improve my neuroplasticity. I just listed a bunch of them, but do them. They're so important. And yeah, mind maintenance. Watch my series on TikTok, but I talk all about these things and sort of what I'm doing every week, like journaling, counter arguing things with myself, like pick a side in an argument or think of a preconceived opinion that you have that's strong, like something really strong, like cheating is wrong, or a political belief that you hold that is strong, and force yourself to counter it. Just entertain the thought. Aristotle said it is the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without accepting it. It's one of my favorite quotes. And I think it's so true. Like, if you are someone who cannot entertain opinions different from your own or schools of thought opposite to your own, to the point because you're so emotional, you become so emotionally hijacked that you can't even go there. It's like, I think that's a mark of a kind of ignorant person, is stubbornness. You want to have an open mind. You want to be able to see all sides of a coin, all sides of an argument. You want to be able to argue both sides of a situation so well that people don't know which side you're on, because that increases empathy, and it's going to open you up to the reality that there's really no right and wrong. There is only perspective, and I think that will keep you sharp, and I think it'll keep you feeling more in control. The more you learn, the more you want to learn. It becomes a very addictive thing, especially if you reward yourself. There's something that I'm learning recently, which is that you can trigger the release of dopamine with your thoughts. Dopamine is a neuromodulator, neurochemical associated with motivation and reward. So low motivation as an individual is low dopamine, typically. And I mean, it's responsible for a lot of other things, like Parkinson's disease, but just for the purposes of this video, it's your brain's way of when it's released saying, do that again. That's why cocaine is so addictive, because when you do cocaine, I think it's like 10 times above baseline or something like that is how much it raises your dopamine levels. And so that's like, do it again, do it again, do it again. So you want to do it again. You can trigger this though by allowing yourself to feel rewarded, and that will help motivate you to maintain consistent effort instead of only feeling rewarded with the final outcome. Does that make sense? So learning to reward the effort, not the outcome. So instead of rewarding yourself only if you finish a book, reward yourself if you finish a page or 10 pages, or you read for 30 minutes. That really will keep you more motivated, because that's what's going to tell your brain, do that again, do the effort again, do the consistent small little win again, instead of just telling your brain, do that again when you finish a book, because that's kind of setting you up for failure. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe that's a bad example. It's more like if the only time you feel proud of yourself or reward yourself is when you like buy a house or you get a promotion or you get engaged. Like, that's not life. You're not doing that every day. That's not learning. It's the little things. And maybe you didn't, like if you're studying, especially if you're studying for the LSAT, oh my God, maybe you don't know why this answer is right. Maybe you haven't solved this problem yet, but did you work on it for an hour? And do you feel like you kind of got somewhere? You need to learn to reward yourself for the little things. It will also lead you to a much happier life, because that's life. Life is the little things. It's not the big achievements that happen rarely. And that sounds cliche, but there is, you know, neuroscience behind that. So if you want to make learning addictive, learn to trigger the release of dopamine with your thoughts and reward yourself for the effort, not the outcome. You know what I'm saying? And reward yourself for loving yourself enough and respecting yourself enough to do something better with your time than scroll and you learn something. So decide that you're going to read for 30 minutes every single night. You're going to do 15 minutes of fiction and 15 minutes of nonfiction. And if that doesn't happen and you spend the entire 30 minutes trying to get through 2 pages, but you have a deep understanding of those 2 pages, that is a job well done, and there's way more value and benefit to that than anything else. Take online classes, take master classes. And I know a lot of people, I've been hearing this term thrown around, anti-intellectualism, which I understand. It's basically saying that like a YouTube education is not a university education. It's not, you shouldn't think that you know more than a lawyer or a doctor, and you should not. Absolutely you don't. You did not spend the money or the time or have the resources or any of the things that would constitute that level of education. But some people can't afford it, and some people don't have access to it. And so I don't think you should ever start saying that you're a doctor, or that you know more than a doctor, or that you know more than a lawyer, or that you're equal, because you're not. But that doesn't mean that you should get a YouTube education, and it certainly doesn't mean that there's no value in YouTube educations, especially when a lot of the YouTube education is from other doctors and scientists. So at least you're kind of getting by proxy some of the information that they have. Yeah, learn a new language, and understand that being pretty is the least interesting thing about you, and one of the most fulfilling, dynamic, magnetic, purposeful things a person can be is educated and intellectual. Don't allow yourself to just let life pass by without having as deep of an understanding of it as possible. And armor yourself with as much intelligence and education as you can, because it's a privilege that I think a lot of people will never have access to. And again, most people will never know how brilliant they can be, and I think that's really sad. So I hope that you're feeling inspired. I hope that you spend just 20% of your relaxing time or scrolling time learning and working your brain and feeding your brain, and remembering that the purpose of being alive is to have that sense of wonder and appreciate the things around you and be curious. And we live on a very colorful, vibrant, dynamic, complex earth, and our universe has so many mysteries, and I think it would be a shame and a waste of life to not go see the world, to not learn as much about the world as you can, to not ask as many questions as you can, to not treat curiosity like a religion, and prioritize your intellectual curiosity and take great care of your brain. You will never ever regret taking care of your brain and prioritizing your education. Time spent learning could never be time wasted. I don't care what you're learning about. Have projects going, have things that you're reading, have things that you're watching, have things that you're writing, and take classes and watch YouTube videos and watch documentaries, and take notice of the classroom that is the world around you, and know that you really are your own greatest teacher. You know all the right questions to ask, and thank God for the internet and libraries, because now you have access to all the answers. Be careful with the information that you see online from other people. You do have access to information from scientists and doctors, and you have access to studies. Force yourself to read dense nonfiction articles and studies. Even if you don't know what they're saying at first, keep reading them, keep looking things up, go sentence by sentence until you understand. And then you'll be able to read a full study. You'll be able to understand at a scientific level. Read clinical studies, read clinical trials. Be open to all different perspectives. Be open to moral ambiguity. Be open to even scientists and doctors having different perspectives. Do not pick a side 100% ever in life. Being black and white, I think, is a very stubborn, ignorant thing to do. I understand you have beliefs and opinions that are strong, but never become so emotionally hijacked that you can't even entertain other thoughts and entertain other perspectives. Do your best to not spread misinformation, and get your information from as qualified sources as possible, and stay logical. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I believe in every single one of you. I really do. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. So thanks so much. Please subscribe. And if you liked this, please, let me know what other kinds of videos you'd like me to make. So thanks. Love you guys.